Healthy life, healthy relationships, brought to you by Taking the Escalator. If you haven't heard of Taking the Escalator, you don't know what it's about. It's really just a method for overcoming, working on substance use and mental health issues that really is kind of imitates an escalator. It's just about moving forward and upward. It's kind of a philosophy of life. No matter what happens, just stay motivated and keep moving forward and keep pressing upward and onward. And that's it. That's the way to do it. So, with that said, this topic of relationships is a very interesting topic. It's surely to come up in any substance use or mental health or co-occurring program. So let's delve into some of these issues because we know that relationships tend to parallel life. When our life is going well, our relationships tend to go well. And when our relationships are not doing well, life tends to be pretty challenging. So it's in everybody's best interest to work on relationships. And it's a lot of work. It's constant. And the more you put into it though, it's worth it. And if you're going to be working on a substance use issue and in some form of recovery, mental health as well, this investment in your relationships is definitely something you're going to have to tackle. We all have to, whether everybody really. So let's get into the topic a little here. Three main aspects we're going to cover here when it comes to relationships. Ending negative relationships. There's some you got to terminate, right? They're no good for you. But it's not always that easy because there's some that are easier than others. If you're trying not to use drugs, cutting off your drug dealer might be one of the easier ones to end. But if you're having problems with your mom or your spouse or your children, that's not so easy to just say, "Oh, you're upsetting me. I'm never going to talk to you again." That's that's it's a little more complicated than that. That leads us into the next phase, repairing existing relationships. And that's probably the hardest to work on, and that takes the most time, but that's the most rewarding when you can improve relationships. No relationship is going to be perfect, and they're all going to have ups and downs and bumps, but the work you put in, you get back because when relationships are going well and there's respect and support and those things help with the recovery process so much. So if you're in this for substance use or mental health, it is in your best interest to work on your relationships. But it can be a grinding process, as anybody who has been involved with that knows. And then there's the hardest one. This world is difficult for seeking and establishing new relationships. It's hard to meet people. The older you get, it's funny when you get out of high school, it's one of the first things you learn. Man, it's hard for an adult to make new friends, and sometimes you got to go for quality over quantity with friendships. But we're going to talk a little bit about some ways to seek and establish new relationships. So let's start with ending negative relationships, and that's the one. It's a little overplayed on social media. I don't know if how the involvement you're on social media, but if you're on it, you've surely seen the memes and the advice giving. If something is no good for you, cut it off. And that's a partial truth. There are some people that you should cut off, and it's valuable to cut off, but you can't cut out everyone that upsets you. You can't cut out everyone that you don't like. You're even people you love, you're going to have periods where you're not necessarily crazy about them and they're not crazy about you. Relationships ebb and flow. So, but let's start with ending. There are ones you definitely should end. We all should end. We're going to talk about toxic relationship traits. Some relationships are just no good. And if you're dating or even friendships, some friendships are just more pain than the reward that you get, and they should be ended. So let's start with that. Let's talk. And it's up to you to end your relationships. Nobody should really tell you to do that. But let's review some traits, some toxic traits that would make you consider ending a relationship. So looking aspects of what you consider a toxic relationship. Something's toxic is poisonous. It hurts you. It damages you. It's no good for you. So these are some things to consider. Maybe think about one of your relationships now that's a little shaky or even worse, and try to measure as we go along here. Is this relationship toxic? There is a corresponding worksheet that goes right along with this. You can maybe write down on there aspects of toxic relationships that stand out to you. Obviously, let's start with the obvious one. If there's violence or abuse in a relationship, they say safety first. If your safety or the safety of your loved ones, especially children, is at risk, that is probably the most toxic trait. And it's easier to identify physical and sexual abuse, but also emotional abuse can be a little less easy to identify sometimes, but very damaging. So if you are in an abusive situation, that would be a situation to seek help. That would be an emergent situation that you wouldn't want to wait on. So to speak to someone about. And even if you think you're in an abusive relationship, you should talk to somebody, because there can be a little bit of awareness building. What you can almost become used to being in an abusive relationship, not almost kind of pushing it away. It's not so bad. We know how the cycle can be, and sometimes often talking to a counselor can help uh, with guidance. But that's number one. That is, that it doesn't get more toxic than that when you're in an abusive situation. You want to deal with that right away. Toxic trait: deception and lying. Uh, and this, you shouldn't have to wonder what the truth is with people that are close to you. If it's your friend, if it's your partner, it's not unreasonable to have expectations that a person is where they are, say they were going to be, they're not doing things behind your back, or obviously we're all going to have parts of our life that are just belong to us alone. I'm not talking about kind of micromanaging your relationships, but at the same time, that whole concept of a double life shouldn't be there. To find out that someone you're close to has a whole side to them that you know nothing about, especially like a close relationship partner, that's a toxic trait, especially when it comes to cheating and things like that. Having online relationships and people they're doing all things that they're hiding from you, because they know it's wrong, and nor should you be doing the same thing. So again, not that everything has to be completely transparent that you do, but still, if someone's leading a double life and they're lying to you constantly and you never know where to stand, that's a toxic trait, and that's something to consider. Right along the same lines, control and jealousy. No one should be controlling your life. Jealousy is a toxic trait, and there's really nothing you can do to prevent someone from, if you're in, let's say, a romantic relationship, if someone's going to cheat, they're going to cheat. All you can do as a relationship partner is be the best person you can be. If they're going to cheat, they're going to cheat. You're not going to stop it by spying on them, or people are just going to be more clever. If someone is going to try to do that to you, your jealousy is not going to prevent it. And it's a lesson a lot of people have to learn. Jealousy is a toxic trait. If you have that trust being built, you don't need to be jealous. And also, when two people care about each other, they should be trying not to make each other feel jealous. Not putting each other in uncomfortable situations. But that's something to talk about in a counselor. That can get into the weeds as far as what's reasonable, not reasonable. But it's important that couples come to a mutual understanding about boundaries and what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. But nobody should be trying to control another person by spying, recordings, constant phone checking, things like that. You're getting into toxic territory right there. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. Ugh, this guy got this guy out of his stock photos. Poor guy. He's the criticism and put down guy. This picture. So yeah, obviously relationships there's gonna be ups and downs, and people are gonna say things that they regret every now and then in our imperfection. But in a general sense, a toxic relationship is one where you're feeling put down, or if someone is holding you back and kind of oppressing you almost with criticism, with insults, whether it be physical insults, emotional insults, insults about your weight, your looks, your intelligence level, your degree, your money you're making, whatever it is. Nobody should be giving you that feeling. In fact, a healthy relationship, by contrast, people are building each other up, encouraging each other in all those ways, encouraging each other to be the best they can be and to excel in their career and their goals and all those things. Your relationship partner should be someone who you builds you up, not puts you down. Mean Girls. If you've seen that movie, I don't get getting a little old now, but what a classic. That disrespect, lack of empathy, someone who same line who's making you feel disrespected. You should feel respected from all relationships, from friendships, from relationship partners, and if you're constantly feeling disrespected, it is a toxic trait and something to consider. Um, Relationships are built on understanding. The bridge to human um, relationship building really is empathy, built based on understanding each other. And if no one's gonna full understand you fully, don't think that just because sometimes your partner doesn't understand you every now and then, that's normal. But if you're feeling like your partner has no understanding or very little understanding of what it's like to be you, they're not taking the time to understand who you are and what you care about and what you value, that you're getting into toxic territory there. Disloyalty and mistrust, obviously, that backstabbing. Yeah, there's a lot of ways someone can backstab you. Obviously, the most in a romantic relationship, the most obvious one is cheating on you. But there's other ways. People can backstab you financially, rack up your credit cards without saying anything, uh, take things from you, say things to your family behind your back. There's a million ways to be disloyal. So nobody is perfectly loyal. We all make mistakes, but anybody who is having a repeated pattern of more severe disloyalty, that is a toxic situation that you should reconsider. And that goes same true with friendships. A friend who's constantly telling your secrets behind or doing other things to that you try betraying your trust repeatedly. It's time to reconsider, is this really a friend worth keeping? One-way relationships, that's a tough one. And that's because there's dynamics that can change the power structure in a relationship. For example, let's say you're in a romantic partnership with someone, marriage or whatever, and somebody's sick or disabled. There's going to be one person who's doing more giving and one person's more taking. Just that's kind of how it works out when someone's more needy per se. The idea being that if you become the needy one, they should help you more, and but in a relationship or a friendship where the power structure is a little more even, power structure is probably the wrong term, but where no one, both sides have the capacity to help each other equally, there should be equal giving and taking. Someone, like even just let's think about talking. If someone who's just you're doing all the listening and they're doing all the talking, that's a one-way situation. Or they're constantly asking you for favors, but then you ask them for favors and they say no. You lending money that a zillion times and then you want payback, or you want to borrow money back, they say no. That's a one-way situation where one person is the giver and one person is the taker. Now you're getting into toxic territory. That could be in friendships, that can be in romantic relationships, and that's something to keep note of as a toxic trait. Dependency and rescuing, very similar situation, and quite often happens when one person might be in a situation where their life is out of control. Could be a friendship, could be a partner, and their life is out of control, whether for whatever reason. Quite often that could be because they're using substances, and you know how that goes. One person finds himself constantly bailing that person out, being there, being the life raft for that person, and it becomes this uh, helper needy relationship over and over and over and over again. Granted, we want to be there for our friends, we want to be there for our loved ones, and if somebody really needs our help, of course, there's nothing wrong with lending a helping hand. But it can become a really toxic situation when someone is taking advantage. So this is the next section, repairing existing relationships. And the reason I picked that picture with the dirty hands is because you're going to get your hands dirty. This is a process. And when you repair something, that's usually what your hands look like, right? You're getting your hands dirty. You're putting in a lot of work. There's no quick fixes to relationships. So this is probably the hardest one, and so don't get discouraged if you think that, wow, like, oh, there's no easy answers here, because it really isn't. But there are things to consider, and there's aspects of repairing existing relationships. So on the worksheet that corresponds, there's the building blocks of healthy relationships. And as a group, if you're doing this in group therapy, it's advisable to go through these and talk about how starting with yourself. You can't change other people. We want other people to change, and but you can't do it. You can't make people be who you want them to be. So start with yourself, and people will change the way they respond to you when you change. It takes time, but when you commit to change, so if you commit to some of these healthy building blocks, if you become more honest, if you become more respectful, if you become more emotionally supportive, pick any one of these. Find your areas that you need to work on. And boundaries. Maybe you need to set boundaries. You start setting boundaries, you will see your relationship partners, even your friends, slowly, not right away, change in response to your positive changes. So you start with yourself. Maybe you need to be more loving. Maybe you need to be more joyful. Maybe you need to have uh, work on more shared interests. Maybe you need to be more affectionate. But starting with yourself. So any taking the escalator exercise, we talk about insight so much. Do that self awareness. Which one of these do you need to work on? And again, no quick fixes here. So let's say you pick forgiveness and you decide to forgive your partner, and you say, "Hey, they didn't change. I forgave them." I said, that doesn't work like that. These are things that you commit to. Building blocks. When you build a house, you build it steady, slow and steady, and then block by block, or build a wall block by block, and then eventually you have that structure. So just these are long-term things. But start with yourself, and this is I advise the group to do that. What do you need to work on? And then go back. And if you have a relationship you are wanting to work on, uh, what are some of these things you can talk about with your partner? Can you talk about your anger control and their anger, and do it in a respectful way? Can you talk about being more caring, showing more kindness, working together to solve problems, sharing some values, sharing some interests, more time commitment, setting aside time for each other? So many of these things on this building block you can use in conversation. Again, long term. These aren't one time conversations. These are goal oriented things to work on over time in relationships. But the work pays off. Trust me. Um, and it doesn't stop. I think that we all work on this. I've been married 20, going on 25 years. I'm still always working on the relationships, and I have kids as well. I work on my relationships with my kids, and looking at these things and discussing these things with those people we care about is very important, and it builds those relationships. So this is definitely something you can explore more as a group, and in with if you're in individual therapy with your counselor, and I advise you to do so. Okay, the last section. This is so hard, finding new relationships. That's why everybody likes dogs, because you get a dog, the dog loves you. And, it's very rare, that you can't make a nice relationship with a dog, man. They are built to love. People aren't not like that. Unfortunately, people are dog crazy nowadays because dogs are so awesome. You want a friend, get a dog. Try, a little cute little puppy like that. But we need to have human relationships as well. I mean, it's great to have pets, but so this is about finding some humans in life. And I think it's in recovery when you're dealing with substance use, it's one of the most challenging things because there's a social aspect to the substance world. It's granted a twisted one at times. There's a whole culture or subculture of the drug world and the drinking world and bars and whatnot. And then all of a sudden, you want to stop doing that, and then it's hard to make new positive relationships. A lot of work goes involved. So nothing, no quick fixes here, but let's talk about some things you can do to try to build some new relationships. But it's hard work. It all starts with your values. Values is so important. That's what it is. What your values are, what's important to you. If you're working on substance use issues, you're working on mental health, your values should be changing. You could stop using, that's one thing. But if you really want recovery, positive change, whatever you want to call it, you need new values. And so, like when you're getting high, your value might be where can I get money? How can I find ways to party? And all of a sudden, that's not in your life. Now you might have new values. How can I support my family more? How can I work, get a job that's going to pay me more? How can I do more to feel spiritually empowered? The more wholesome values, whatever those might be, you're going to be developing those, or you probably are already if you're in group therapy right now. So with your new values come some new priorities, but you can use these values to your advantage in finding new friendships and relationship partners if that's what you're doing. It's a good starting point. Thinking about, and that's something if you process this later as a group, what's important to you? Because what's important to you should be part of the building blocks of your new relationships. New places to look. I picked that picture on purpose because we sometimes get caught up in the friends with people like me mentality. And it's easy sometimes to get caught up in that. Like, oh, I want to be friends with people my age, my background. And that's nice and that's good if you can find that. But sometimes when friendships are harder to find, you got to look outside. You got to look outside. So here's people of different age groups, an older woman and a younger one. The one woman who's younger than her, I don't know how young the one on the left is, but they're clearly different age group. And I've found that in my own life, uh, making friendships with older people that are outside of my age range, or even younger people too. So looking outside the range and also looking in new places. If you were a person who went to a bar all the time to make friends, and now you're trying to stay away from that life, does it make sense to go to a bar to make friends again? Because now you got a friend who wants to go to the bar all the time, and if you don't want to go there, why bother? Or same, even worse with a relationship partner. If you're trying to get your act together, does it make sense to meet somebody at a club? It doesn't make sense because now you're not going to change them from wanting to go to the club. They're going to try to get you to go, and next thing you know, you're going to be living that life again. So considering some new places. So, and that's hard. I'm not trying to say it's easy, but thinking about places like bookstores and things in the community and looking outside where you normally looked. And the internet's good for that. And if you're working with a counselor, that's a good place to look as well. Talk to your counselor about some stuff. New things to try. Pick that picture on purpose as well. Had a client who struggled and struggled and struggled, didn't get into like the NA, and AA just wasn't for this client. And she was working on her substance issues and mental health as well. And out of nowhere, this person found their thing by getting into a bicycling, and they joined a bike club, and that became the thing. Getting on the bike with people, a group of people, and riding different places and driving different places to go on these long rides, and it became this person's like their AA to do biking. So trying new things, and there are a lot of things out there, and it's good to look outside your comfort zone a little bit and think what's out there. Try some new things. That's how you meet new people. New ways to get involved. So you're doing something already. Let's say you are going to AA, or you're in a class, or you're doing something already, but you're not, hey, this isn't paying off. Maybe try to speak up a little more. This person's raising their hand in the picture. Get a little more involved. That, like, let's say you are in a meeting, do a commitment, or if you are in a class, raise your hand, talk to the person next to you. With the internet now, people get away from starting conversations, and it's okay to start a conversation. It's something I've learned to embrace more as I got older, starting conversations with people, and you get shut down a lot less than you think you would. And if you're smiling and you're friendly, people will make small talk, and sometimes You meet people that you hit it off with, and you wouldn't sometimes people you wouldn't expect to. So if you're doing something already, how can you get more involved? How can you push yourself a little bit to speak up, to do more in whatever activities you are in? And some fun, I think this is the last one. New perspectives on what you already have. So let's say you're at work. Maybe there's somebody that you walk past every day, and that might be a prospective friend. Maybe start up a conversation with that person. And I remember working with a coworker who was talking about somebody in the office. Oh, I really like this person in the office. They thought they were attractive. It's like, look, say something to her, talk to her, and then the person finally took my advice, and they ended up dating for a really long time. So, you never know. But you gotta get out there and kind of and look outside and speak up sometimes. But also, if you already have some friends, what about your friends of your friends? Maybe there's things your friends are into that you weren't into at first. Maybe go with your friends. Maybe they like some kind of music you don't like. Go to the concert anyway. See, maybe just to meet some new people. Why not? But it's if you want to make friends, you gotta get out there. And finally, skills. So these things we talked about are hard. They're for especially if you have social anxiety or you're just not used to it. So that's what your counselor is there for. That's what your group therapy is there for. Work on the skills, assertiveness, setting boundaries, learning to deal with the social anxiety, doing positive self-talk, and getting the courage and the strength and the skills and the coping, deep breathing, relaxation, coping with panic attacks, whatever it is that's holding you back, get those skills because those skills work. I'm definitely a believer. I mean, I've been a therapist 30 years. I've used skills in my own life. And if you practice the skills, some problems will never go away. You might, if you have social anxiety, you might have social anxiety for the rest of your life to some degree, but you can overcome it. I making a video like this at one point would have petrified me, but now I'm like, I've got the skills to be like whatever and kind of just get out there and put myself out there regardless. But so you can learn to develop these skills. I think that was the last one. Yes.
1, 2, 3.
What the heck?
Testing 1, 2, 3.
I don't know what's that from. So thanks for your time and enjoy and check my website at takingtheescalator.com. All right. Have a good day.